is not here. Let's make this up. It says speaker muted. How to unmute it? Ah, they got it. Yeah. Because they can hear better, otherwise it just... ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः तौह प्रजापतिः उवाच यः एषः अक्षिणीपुरुषः दृश्यते एष आत्मा इति होवाच एतदमृतम् अभयमेतत् ब्रह्म इति अथ योऽयं भगवः अप्सु परिख्यायते यश्चायम् आदर्शे कथम एष इत्येषः उ एवैषु सर्वेषु अन्तेषु परिख्यायते इति होवाच. Interesting dialogue between all three of them. Again they speak with one voice, and so Prajapati says, this is the Atma you are looking for. What is that? Yaha akshini purushaha drishyate. Very interesting teaching. The Atma is the person that is seen in the eye. What is seen in the eye? It is not very clear. You know, how do I know this? How do I know what is seen in the eye? You know, when something falls in the eye, okay, that is seen in the eye. But what is it that is a person that is seen in the eye? That is the Atma. And then he gives further defines the Atma. Etat, this Atma, he says, is Brahman. This Atma, what you are looking for, is indeed Brahman. Brahman means the truth of everything, including the body-mind-sense complex, starting with this body-mind-sense complex, the content of the universe, the truth of the universe, that adhishthana, that because of which everything exists, and upon which everything depends, from which everything emerges, unto which everything resolves. This is Atma, this is Brahman, and this Atma that you're looking for, there is no other Atma other than Brahman. It is Brahman alone. And what is it? Etad Amritam. This is the one that is the deathless one. Abhayam. He adds one more word to his previous proclamation. In the previous proclamation, the word Abhaya was missing. It was not there. In the original proclamation, Ya Atma Apahatapapma Vijaraha Vimrityuhu Vishokaha. Vishokaha was there, but Abhaya was not there. And so now he adds one more. This is Amritam. This is the one that is not subject to death. And when something is not subject to death, it is not an object of fear. Because really the fear is of endings. That's why one fears death so much, because one sees it as an ending. Limitation. So the fear is centered around limitation. And Atma being Brahman, being limitless, there is no fear. First reason to not have fear. And what is the second reason? Second reason is because for fear there have to be at least two entities. I am afraid of. Correct? That preposition of, which is the fifth case, that is what it is, that ablative case begs another thing. You know, bibhe from what? Kasmat. You have to ask, from what are you afraid? And one, you can say, I'm afraid of cockroach. Starting with cockroach, you can list all the things and there will be a big list. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that, I'm afraid of myself, I'm afraid of others, I'm afraid of, dark, I'm afraid even during the daylight, I'm afraid all the time. So these are, so the fear, to be afraid is a transitive verb because it begs the question, what are you afraid of? And so in Atma, how many things are there? Just itself alone. And so it is free of fear, because for fear to be there should be a second thing. And this is how the integration of Indra and Virojana starts here, because that word Abhaya is used. The one that is a self-shining one, there is no need for fear. The fear comes from duality, dvaitadhi bhayam bhavati. That is why in the general proclamation made to the public, this word Abhaya is not used by Lord Prajapati, and it is used only in this context. When the two pretending to be one, or the one pretending to be two, are there and they are constantly, there is fear there. There is fear of the unknown, and if that unknown is something to do with oneself, an aspect of what one considers oneself, the fear is very much there. And this is the reason why it is very difficult for most people to sit quietly with themselves for more than 5 minutes. Sometimes even for 5 minutes. And we see this in airports all the time, Some occupation must be there. You have to be talking to someone, you have to be reading something, you have to be on one of the devices, or you have to be, watching something, eating something. Some activity keeps the fear of really the unintegrated parts of oneself at bay. This is what we understand from the teaching here, is that constant activity is a way of keeping the fear at bay. That is what it takes, Until the knowledge is assimilated, therefore, even the Shastra says, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, all of them say, keep being active, do what you're supposed to do, and that's why Karma Yoga means you do what you're supposed to do, and what you're not supposed to do, there is no time for it. There is no time to do what you're not supposed to do because you're kept busy doing what you're supposed to be doing. So there's the mind is not idle because one has not mastered the ability to sit with oneself, because as soon as you sit with oneself, this other entity pops up and makes itself known. Oh, it's my time. No, who said it's your time? No, it is my time because you're sitting quietly with nothing to do. All right, who are you? Don't ask. What do you want? How long you have? How much time do you have to ask what I want? And the adult who is listening to this inner child does not yet have that space, only that knowledge, gives that ultimately that inner space to be able to see this and witness this child just like one witnesses everything else. So until then, the adult is tied down by the child, hijacked by the child, and the adult is not available to be able to observe the child and parent the child. And so the compensatory mechanism used by the adult is to avoid the child. What child? Where is it? No, there is nothing. It's just me. And yes, I like to keep busy. Busy is good. This is what one tells oneself. And one is in the hub of activity all the time because one is afraid of what will come up even if you sit for 5 minutes. All the things that come up, all the inner children, rather inner brats, inner entities, all the unrequited fears, unrequited expectations, all of them come up all at once. And since the adult is identified with this child, the adult is incapable of handling it. So therefore, Prajapati teaches very beautifully, gives the Shastra, gives the knowledge of Atma by describing it as Abhayam. Abhayam Brahma. This Atma is Abhayam Brahma, the source of fearlessness. And this is the first step to integrating this child, to know that any fear is an aberration that needs to be healed, that needs to be understood. Because the truth of myself, Atma, is in fact fearless. And then the death and fear go together, as I said, because the fear is usually of endings and limitations. And so here he just uses two words, Abhayam Amritam. Vimrityuhu in that proclamation is now talked about as Amritam, that which is not subject to death. Vimrityuhu, that which has transcended death, same thing, expressed in two different ways. And Abhayam was not used first, but here it is needed because the presence of Virochana, either within or without, is something to be afraid of. Because what are we going to do with this frightening fellow? Frightening only in proportions. Frightening because it is unknown. Frightening because one doesn't know what to do with it. Frightening because it is a shadow that has gone rogue and threatening to eclipse the sun of reality. Frightening because it can and does eclipse it at times, as though, but still you feel the effects. Frightening also because one doesn't know how to get rid of this eclipse. And frightening also because when one starts to deal with the inner child, even if one is ready and starts to deal with the inner child, it says, I don't trust you. You have been avoiding me all your life. I wanted time. Did you give? No. You kept on studying. You kept on doing this after that, and after this you did that. Then you took two jobs, and then you did this, and then you avoided me in all these ways. And now you say, oh, come here, I'll parent you. I'm going to trust you. Am I crazy? It will not trust in the beginning. for a long time actually. So that is another reason it is frightening. So the first thing the teacher does is the upashamana of the fear by assuring that this Brahman is fearless and that Brahman is indeed you. It is this Atma. So in other words, you are free of fear. And who is being taught? Indra is being taught. Yeah, Indra is being taught. And then what is the teaching for Virochana? Akshini Purusha Drishyate. That Purusha which is seen in the eye, that is for the one who is not yet an adult. Seen in the eye, we can look at it in many different ways. One way, the most direct way to look at it is as an upasana. Upasana is a meditation. There is one Dakshinakshi Akshini Upasana. The Purusha in the eye. Purusha is not in the eye, nothing is in the eye, but when you see, it is a meditation where one kind of half closes the eye and just looks around and watches the world go by. And then if you are right-handed, you are told to be hyper aware, to bring the awareness to that which makes sight possible. That which makes sight possible is what? Bhagavan, and that Bhagavan is seen as a small Purusha that is operating behind the one eye and allowing you to see. So you are seeing, but you are also in touch with the awareness of the Purusha that is operating the seer, seen, sight, everything, and that Purusha is neither the seer nor the seen nor the means of seeing. It's neither karana nor the cause nor the effect nor anything. It upholds seer, seen, sight without being either the seer or the seen. Beautiful. That limitless Purusha you see behind the eye. It is even if one doesn't understand all of it, the practice of being able to visualize the Purusha behind the eye and making one see, even if you say that Bhagavan is making me see, it is a certain kind of a surrender and a practice of meditation, correct? And a very good thing for Virochana to do here. Because it keeps one busy to be able to do this, and it is at that level. So at one level you can see it as an upasana, which is also alluded to in another portion of the Chandogya Upanishad. It is this very upasana is outlined. So perhaps Prajapati is recalling that, which is there even in the Brihadaranyaka. This comes, this Akshini Upasana, the Purusha in the eye. And this is a big source of contention in the Brahma Sutra. What is this? It has been analyzed so much. What is this Akshini Purusha? What is this, And the Purva Pakshi has a field day, and the Purva Pakshi says it is something fallen in your eye, one contention. And then another Purva Pakshi, another objector comes and says, no, it's not something that is fallen in your eye. Come on, don't be so stupid. But he himself is stupid, the second one. The second one says, when you look in the mirror, what do you see in your eye? You see yourself reflected. That's what it is. And then, the third one says, no, it is when you look at somebody else, you see yourself reflected in their eye. It must be like that. So there is all these contentions which are put to rest by this explanation that we just saw. That it is Bhagavan which is allowing the sight, allowing that non-differentiated, undifferentiated, limitless, non-dual Bhagavan, which is neither the seer nor the sight nor the seen, is allowing this triputi, this triad of seer, seen, sight, it's upholding that without being any one of them. Very beautiful. So that is actually the understanding. So we can say that the teaching is given on many levels. So if the person just says, this is an upasana, this is my prayer to Bhagavan, that I recognize Bhagavan behind the eye, okay, wonderful. It will still give you little more chitta shuddhi, little more naishchalyam, little more ability to sit with yourself. Very nice. But if one is able to see, this is for the adult, that one is able to see the grandeur of this teaching, Akshini Purusha means that which is the eye of the eye. Chakshushas Chakshuhu talked about in the Kenopanishad, same thing. So the eye sees, but what is it that makes the eye see? What is that sentient consciousness that makes the eye operate in the way that it does? So that is basically what is being talked about. This yaha akshini purushaha drishyate. So this is what. So it is at very different levels, whether one, depending on one's emotional maturity, this teaching can be deployed and received at many different levels. But then the abhaya is the assurance, because in the first contact with the teacher always says, ma bhaishta. Don't be afraid, because the fear is what drives one to the teachings. Sorrow is what one drives to the teachings. That is why in all the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, there is Eka Vakyata, a united, a consonance of purport. There is only one purport. Shoka nivrittihi. You can approach the teachings from the standpoint of the removal of sorrow, which is the approach followed in the Bhagavad Gita. Ashocyan anvashochastvam. You are sad because you are grieving over that which does not deserve grief. The teaching begins then until ma ashuchaha, till the end. Do not grieve. There is no cause for grieving. So the whole, premise is about grief being an imposter to oneself. That is one approach taken. And then the other approach in the Taittiriya and all we see is that of fear. Taittiriya, Brihadaranyaka, and even here it is that of the removal or being free of fear, because these are the two powerful emotions that form the content of the inner child and take one for a ride, life after life after life. This life afraid, next life sad, next life afraid, and then life after that both afraid and sad. Things are getting complicated, So this is the situation. So bhaya nivritti. That is why in the Taittiriya Upanishad it is not so much shoka is discussed, but bhaya is discussed. How abhayam pratishtham vindate. Then bhayangato bhavati. The person becomes free of fear. And abhayam pratishtham vindate. Finds or gains the pratishtha, which is the adhisthana, which is the truth of oneself, as fearless. And then again, that same mantra is repeated twice to show that the fear is crossed, first on the relative level and then finally on the absolute level. You cannot bypass the relative fear in order to address the absolute fearlessness. The relative fear has to be addressed, embraced, overridden, and then only you can absolutely be free of fear. How is that? The same mantra is repeated twice. Yato vacho nivartante apraapya manasa saha anandam brahmano vidvan na bibheti kadachaneti. First mantra. So, that which the mind and the words beat a retreat from objectifying, that Brahman, knowing that or understanding that or in the process of knowing that, the person na bibheti, is not afraid. So here that Brahman is seen as Sagunam Brahma, as Bhagavan, Ishvara. And knowing this Bhagavan, knowing Ishvara, knowing Bhagavan, as the truth of the universe, and including myself in this limitlessness, there is a freedom, a relative freedom from fear. Kadachana means at any time one is not afraid because one says, I am in the lap of Bhagavan, I am secure. So the security first is sought on the relative level by connecting to the Lord of the universe, the maker of the universe, and invoking the maker of the universe as the source of fearlessness. And I am included in that limitless one, and so therefore I too, as long as I am under the protection of this umbrella, and I am also not afraid. And what is this umbrella? The umbrella is of surrender. So I have surrendered my limitations at the altar that is limitless, and what is left is limitless, and so I am not afraid. It's like when Lord Krishna was a deluge, like what is happening in Chennai right now. It's not stopping raining at all. Raining. And so Lord Krishna picks up, he wants an umbrella because everybody is worried. So he just picks up, Govardhana. Even mountains had names. And so Govardhana is the name of the mountain. And he picks it up. And then that becomes the umbrella, this huge mountain. And he invites everybody, please come. And he's holding it in his little finger, not even like this. Even Hanumanji held the mountain and because he didn't know which herb to bring. So he took the whole mountain to Sri Lanka. And he held it with both hands, even though he's strong. But Lord Krishna just he's playing with it, little finger. So as the doubting jiva, you look at that and you say, oh, that doesn't look very secure, because he could let go of it and it could just come on me and I could become chutney under it, So I'm not going inside. No, because in a way there is no option. Because outside I'm going to be swept away, inside I'm going to be flattened. So, that is the fear. So therefore, really speaking, there is no other option but to surrender. And in this, when the option is not there, means this is how it is. This is how the laws of the karma which are affecting me, this is how they are. And I am being afflicted. I am, small. I feel that smallness. I feel the power of everything that is disturbing me from outside and from within. The power of the shadow gone rogue, which is, is pressing me from within, and all the forces that are affecting me from outside. So what other choice is there than surrender? And that surrender gives a relative shanti, a relative abhaya. And that abhaya is very important. That relative abhaya is very important for being able to pursue the absolute abhaya, which is described again in the same mantra with a slight change. Yato vacho nivartante apraapya manasa saha anandam brahmano vidvan na bibheti kutaschaneti. Na bibheti, same thing. When? Kutaschana. Kutaschana means there is no fear, there is fearlessness. From what? Because there is no source other than oneself. One sees oneself as the only thing in the universe. So what is there to be afraid of? No, but what about the cockroach? Cockroach is also you. Yeah, there is no fear. And that fear, because we can't mix the levels. The empirical level and the absolute level, because there is no fear doesn't mean one has to lead the life foolishly. It's not leading the life foolishly, it's leading the life day by day, moment by moment, because one is secure and unafraid. It's not that you go and court disaster because you have this pressure to be unafraid. That's not the point. Like the two scholars in the king's court. I've told you that story, right?
I think so.
Yeah. But people want to hear it again because they are pretending not to know, many of them. And some of them don't know. So in this king's court, there were two scholars. And in those days they didn't have cable TV, so the kings used to have these fellows for entertainment. They had a court of, musicians, scholars, everybody. And so one was a Dvaitin, a dualist. How do you spell that? Dualists. Always looking for a duel. And then The other one was an Advaitin, a non-dualist. And the two were always at each other's throat. And then one day they decide to go for a picnic. And they take a whole basket, and the king and his retinue, they go for a nice hunt, and they sit down to eat. And as soon as they start eating, they hear a little rustling behind the trees. And somebody shouts, "Tiger, tiger, tiger." And you know who runs away first? The non-dualist, the Advaitin, who is chanting every day, "Abhayam pratishtham vindate, na vibheti kutascha neti." Etadatma dvaitadhi bhayam bhavati. Atma amritam abhayam. This is the one who knows all that by heart. He is the first one to just run as fast as his legs. He just picks up the dhoti in hand and runs. Runs away, and the other ones also react and they also run. And after they are safely out of the reach of the Vyaghra, the tiger, then, the dualist is waiting for this opportunity. And the dualist says, "See, Maharaj, see, Your Majesty, you keep saying that, that Advaita works." Because the king was partial to the Advaitin. You keep giving him gifts and, costly necklaces and everything. You keep giving him presents. And look, and when the tiger came, before the man could finish the sentence, "Tiger, there is a tiger," this fellow had made off. "Tiger is mithya, Maharaj." He keeps saying tiger is mithya. Look, why did he run then? And the king thought, okay, that is also true. How come he ran? If tiger is mithya, he should not have run. And why did you run? "Oh, Advaitin, why did you run?" And the Advaitin calmly, unruffled, he says, "Yes, I have maintained tiger is mithya, Maharaj, but who said running is satyam?" Running is also mithya. Mithya hunger, mithya food, mithya tiger, mithya legs, as fast as you can carry them. So we are not trying to mix the level here. It is very important to see this. So Vedanta makes one sane, really. It is sanity. And it is sanity not to court disaster. That is what it is. You look at you assess the situation and see that retreat is the best way. It is an act of, in a way, it's an act of self-preservation. And so being here, the body, mind, sense complex and the ahankara here, so that is what it is. And nothing wrong in that. You're not courting the disaster. So, but anyhow, back to the teaching here. The teacher always, the first portion of the teaching is always assurance that there is nothing to worry about and nothing to fear. This validates the inner being, the inner child of every student. So here, even in the Viveka Chudamani, the student makes a dramatic monologue to the teacher. Durvara samsara davagni taptam dodhuyamanam duradrishtavatai bhitam prapannam paripahi mrityo. Like this he goes to the teacher. Durvara samsara davagni taptam. I have been scorched repeatedly. By what? By the hot winds of samsara. By the hot winds of bad luck, bad karma, misfortune, which is all directed towards me. Dodhuyamanam, repeatedly, it's a frequentative usage, repeatedly shaken about, like, a toy in the dog's mouth, it shakes it about. Like a, mouse and a cat, it shakes it and throws it. Like that I have been repeatedly being shaken about by my misfortunes. Bhitam prapannam, therefore after these repeat, acts of misfortune, experiencing misfortune, bhitam prapannam means I have become extremely frightened. I have become very, very frightened. This has frozen up, please see. I have become very, very frightened, and so please help me. Anyam sharanam na jane, I don't know any other refuge than you. This is the Viveka Chudamani where the student goes to the teacher. And what is the teacher's response? Ma bhaishta. Don't be frightened. Asti upayah. There is a remedy. What is the remedy? Samsara sagara tarane asti upayah. There is a remedy to cross over this fear, oceanic fear called samsara. And what is this remedy? You're going to give me something special? No. I'm just going to show you the same road through which I have travelled, and several people before you have travelled, and several people before me also have travelled. Because it is a safe road, it's a tried and tested road. You don't need anything new. So this is a very important way for the teaching to proceed. Like I said, ma shuchaha or ma bhaishtaha. So the first encounter, it's always assuring the student, don't fear, I am here, I will take care of this. But for now, understand that what you see in the eye, the Purusha that is seen in the eye is the Atma. And that Atma is Brahman, which is Abhayam, which is free of fear, which is Amritam, free of limitations, free of ending. And this is what, you are seeking. And then they ask a question, which I will read as soon as I find the glasses. And what is the question they ask? Bhagavaha means, oh revered sir. They both have only one voice. Like I said, it's just one person, with a split person asking the question. So, okay, this Purusha seen in the eye, parikhyayate means that which is understood, that which is observed, that which is seen. Is this the one that is seen in the water? Like when you pass a body of water, a lake or something, what do you see? A person, correct? You see in the eye, but then you see the person. Is it the apsu parikhyayate? Is this the person that you see in a body of water, in a reflected body of water? Or, then he says, yaha cha, or cha here is va, yaha cha, ayam adarshe. Or is it the one you see on the adarsha? Adarsha here means mirror. Some kind of a reflecting surface. Whether it's a shining brass pot or a shining edge of a dagger, whatever it is. Some reflecting surface or a shield, you see the face, you see the person. Is that the person that is being talked about? Is the person a reflection in the water? The Purusha in the eye, is it the reflection in the water, or is it the one that is seen in the mirror? Katama, among this, katama eshaha, ityeshaha, u evaishu, so which is the one is the self. Which is the one is the self. Which is the Atma? Is it the one that is clearly seen in the water? Or is it the one that is seen in the mirror, etc., in the form of the image of the body? That is what he is talking about. Or is it sarveshu? So sarve api anteshu means, is it the one that is seen everywhere? And Prajapati's response is, Eshaha u evaishu, eshaha u eva. Very small response. This is the one. It is the one that is clearly seen in all of these. So it is the one that is seen in the reflecting surface, such as the water. It is the one that is seen in the mirror also. Now, what to make of this? And a long discussion ensues in the Shankara's Bhashya, where, of course, the Purva Pakshi is up in arms. The Purva Pakshi means the one who is doubting, the one who doesn't have Shraddha, is the one who says, wait a minute, Prajapati is deliberately misleading the students here. student slash S, is misleading the students here, because clearly they are on the wrong track. And what is the wrong track? They are looking at the body as the Atma. They are looking for their own reflection in surfaces such as water, etc. Is it a shadow? Is it a reflection? What is this? What is this Atma? And instead of, removing their misconception, he is actually confirming their misconception by saying, Eshaha eva, this indeed it is. It is the one that is seen in all these, O gentlemen. Is it right for the teacher to confirm the wrong suspicions of the student, especially when the student gives voice to those suspicions? This is the objection. And Adi Shankara posits that Prajapati was not wrong. Why? Because he was really not misleading the student. Why was he not misleading the students? He was not misleading because he was talking about the truth of that which is reflected in the water, that which is reflected in everything. He was not talking of the reflection itself. He was talking of the power of that which is reflected in every mind, in every eye, in every surface. It is indeed the Atma alone, as it is seen earlier in this Upanishad itself, in one of the Upasanas. This is itself mentioned. This is how Adi Shankara silences all the opponents. But on one level we can see that there is a misconstruing already happening. The question is, why does Prajapati permit it? And Adi Shankara offers a very helpful explanation. Adi Shankara says that because he saw that these were kings, they're not ordinary people off the street. They took to ashram life because they had nothing better to do. They took to ashram life because, they just thought, I'll just live here freely and I don't have to, get a job for myself. I don't have to study. I'll just live here. No, they are serious seekers and they gave up a lot to come here. And so they have a high opinion of themselves. Being kings, ex-kings now, but they have, even though they are brahmacharis, they come from very powerful stock, lot of status, lot of power. And what Prajapati really felt like saying is, Yuva modhau, you both are big fools. Adi Shankara says this. You got everything I said completely, you turned it up on its head, and all your understanding is 100% wrong. This is what he really felt like saying. And he would have said that if Prajapati had an inner child. But Prajapati's unconscious is resolved. It is no longer a matter that comes and attacks him. And so he uses diplomacy, because this is the thing, because the inner child is thinking, I am the ex-king, I had all these things, I gave up so many things, I am here to study and I am a good student. See, I am understanding, I even ask intelligent questions. Sir, is it the one seen in the water? Is it the one seen on land? Is it the one seen in the mirror? I am asking intelligent questions. Look, I am hobnobbing and dialoguing with the teacher. Isn't this what all the teaching is about? This is what the inner child is thinking. And so the Prajapati does not want them to leave and go. Because the inner child is in such a state right now. Off and on perhaps? I did. Okay, it will resolve. Yeah, there we go. So, so the Prajapati is doing what I described in the previous class, as I have seen Pujya Swamiji do with such mastery and finesse. He is keeping them going because, he says, yes, it is the one seen in all of them, and if they don't understand, they will stay here for some more time until it is understood. And this is not the only conversation I am going to have with them. I am going to have multiple conversations with them, and I am going to answer their questions. I am going to understand, I am going to make them understand. But for now, this is all they can take. Because the question reveals then the the nature of the understanding or lack thereof of the questioner, correct? The question reveals. So until one opens one's mouth, one is safe, with one's ignorance. As soon as the mouth is open, you reveal more of what you don't know than what you know. And so here also they reveal their ignorance because the teaching was given at such a high level, or at the level of a upasana, a prayer, a meditation, but they could not catch either of the continuums. Somewhere else they took it. And so Prajapati, thinking that because they are kings and their ego will be very high and they have given up so much to come to this pursuit, let me not make fun of them. Let me not call them, oh you fools, how could you take this? How could you make this of what I said? So instead, knowing that they have a better chance to learn if the inner child is kept going and kept, in check. And how do you keep the inner child in check? By validating it. So that's what he does. He validates their answers, but again it is ultimately not untrue. Ultimately it is the truth. He validates their answers by saying it is the one, yes, you are on the right track. You're not off track ultimately. It is the one that is seen in all of these. And then what happens? Let us find out. Then we have skipped a few things, and I'm going to fill in what we have skipped so that there is some kind of a little bit of a continuity. We have skipped either here or somewhere we have skipped. No, here we haven't skipped. It's the correct one. Yeah, after that we skipped. But anyhow, let us. This is the inner child of the mic. Udasharave Atmanam Vekshya. There should be, it's wrong. It should be Atmanam Avekshya Yat Atmanaha Na Vijanithaha Tanme Prabhutam Iti Tauha Udasharave Avekshan Chakrate Tauha Prajapatihi Uvacha Kim Pashyatha Iti Tauha Uchatuhu Sarvameva Idam Abam Bhagavaha Atmanam Pashyava Alomabhyaha Anakebhyaha Pratirupam iti. Yeah, this is very beautiful. He does an exercise with them based on what they had themselves said. What had they said? It is the reflection. They were convinced. You see, sometimes even though the student asks a question, frequently it is like this. I see this all the time. The students will ask a question, but behind the question is a conviction of the answer that refuses to leave. So the question is just for the sake of asking the question. So what is this? What is this Brahman? It is you. Yeah, I know that. But then, what is it really? So how do I see it? Well, it is not something to be seen because it is you. It is not something that one is able to objectify. Yeah, I know that. I've heard you say that many times. So how do I experience it? But you see, in all these questions, the questions keep coming again and again because one is convinced of something. And that conviction is represented in the form of the question. And that stubbornness, that determination to hold on to that notion is not the property of the adult. It is the property of the inner child who is feeling out of control in the teaching situation. That is why Prajapati affirms, yes, 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 it is the one seen in the water, it is the one seen on land, it is the one seen everywhere. Because he knows that they are not ready to give up that notion. Because frequently the questions are like that, generally questions about Brahman, and another favorite, questions about Punarjanma, questions about karma, and questions about all these things, so many things. Already one is convinced what Atma is, what Brahman is, and then one just wants to be validated. One wants one notion to be validated. And that is not the teaching. The teaching is to dismantle the notions, not validate them. And so here, the dismantling is being done by Prajapati through a very clever experiment and exercise, which of course backfires because these two are there hand in hand. The inner child is eclipsing the adult. That's why the experiment kind of backfires. But does it backfire really? Let us see. So what is the experience? What is the experiment here? He claps his hand and asks the people, whoever else is in the ashram, to bring a big, shallow cauldron of water. So, and he invites Indra and Virochana to approach the cauldron, which is called Uda Sharava. Sharava, cauldron, Uda, filled with water. So he invites them to approach the cauldron and stare at themselves, meaning what? Their reflections in the cauldron, and say and ask them, gentlemen, this is what you thought the Atma is. Please see what you see, look at yourself and tell me what you see. And they both look at themselves. Virochana says, what a handsome Atma! Wow! Oh! And he twirls his mustache because, he sees clearly. One of them is, after many years of brahmacharya and not getting the right gel to keep it in place, it is kind of droopy on one side. So he twirls it and, uses some saliva to make it all nice and stiff and stand out. And Indra also looks at himself and he sees, what a chest, what muscles, what six-pack. Never mind Shamadama, this six-pack, what I am able to see. And look at those biceps and triceps, look at those muscles. And he also uses some saliva to make it all shiny. And they are just strutting around like a pair of peacocks in front of this Uda Sharava. In front of this, they are just like, this Atma, I never thought this Atma is so lovable. No wonder Atma, Apahata Papma, everybody wants this. This is what, fantastic. And then Prajapati breaks their reverie and says, gentlemen, what do you see? They say, why Prajapati? Why revered sir? We see what we are told to see. We see ourselves, what a pretty picture we make, by the way. We see ourselves, alomabhyam and anakhebhyah, right from the tips of our hairs, starting with the tippy tips of our hairs to the tippy tip of our toenails, from the top to the bottom, we see ourselves just as we are. Just exactly how we are, that is how we see ourselves. What is there to talk about? And thank you so much. You have shown the Atma in 3D. Fantastic. This is the Atma, this is wonderful. And they are just cheering inside, so happy. I never thought, how many times have I looked myself in the mirror? How many times have I seen myself reflected on the surface of the water? How many times have I seen myself? And it never occurred to me that the Atma that I was searching for is as simple as looking in the mirror. Now the teacher has told. The teacher has just confirmed their own misbeliefs because they were not ready. This is what the whole thing is. They were not ready, so the teacher just reconfirms, and therefore to hoping to drill some sense and make them see the error of their own ways, even goes so far as to do this experiment with their own notion in the hope that they will drop it. And he calls for a cauldron and makes them see, and see that this is what they are looking at, is what an Atma, a caricature, a reflection. They are only looking at their bodies. They are not looking at the Atma, because the Atma is not an object of sight. It is not an object of inference. It is not the object of any of the pramanas, of any of the means of knowledge that I have, because it is not seen, it is not heard, it doesn't make a sound, it doesn't act, it is not obvious. It is obvious and it is not obvious. It is obvious in the sense it is you. It is not obvious in the sense that it is not an object of your, inference or sight or hearing. This is the point he wants to make. And he takes it, this is, it is called Pratipaksha Bhava. It's a very interesting pedagogy where you step into the shoes of the student and see the world and see the situation as the student is seeing the situation. And then take the teaching from there. I mean, how much compassion this requires, to enter into the world of the student and to say, okay, let's see where this misbelief has taken place, where this misunderstanding is originating from. Let us see and cut it down, nip it right in the bud, right there. So let us enact out this wrong scenario in the hope that through this enactment, the correct scenario will be understood. Does that happen? No. They continue to preen themselves in front of the water. And then what happens? And then we are skipping a few things, and I'm going to catch up. That's why I brought the book, so that we have a sense of continuity. So then what he does is that he tells them, Tauha Prajapatihi Uvacha Sadhu Alankritau Suvasanau Parishkritau Bhutva Udasharave Avekshetham iti. तौह साधु अलंकृतौ सुवसनौ परिष्कृतौ भूत्वा उदशरावे अवेक्षां चक्राते तौह प्रजापतिः उवाच किं पश्यथ इति. So what is missing is one verse in the middle, which is this, whereby Lord Prajapati decides to extend the life of this experiment and tells them, here is some oil, go take a nice bath, and you look really scruffy, having lived in the ashram for 32 years and practicing brahmacharya. Get a haircut, get a nice haircut, and while you're at it, cut your nails. This is parishkaranam, parishkritau, means, you spiff up a little bit. And here is a pair of tuxedos. Go wear them and come back. Tuxedos are new set of crispy white dhotis. And here is some vibhuti. Put some stripes, and put some stripes on the face and arms and everything. And here also are all the ornaments that you took off when you came here. I have preserved them. Wear all these ornaments. Come back and look at yourself in the water. A very ingenious experiment, I must add, because he is hoping that they will see the change. Correct? Before, scruffy looking brahmachari in old white clothes. Usually what happens is, by the end of the 3-year course, the white becomes grey. After it's kind of a yellowish grey hue all the whites take on. So you know how long a brahmachari has been studying after seeing the sthiti, the situation of the clothes, because there's no time to wash. You just wash absently because there's classes to go to, and then the white kind of takes on a thick greyish hue. Correct? So he is hoping, the teacher here is hoping that they see the difference and between themselves as as brahmacharis and themselves as the kings that they are. And then they are able to make the difference and see the Atma is unchanging. So what undergoes a change cannot be Atma. This is what he wants them to see. Are they able to see that? No. And also, I think he has them dress up because it's time for them to leave. If they here, wear your clothes, wear your old clothes and jewelry, because it's time to say bye-bye. Because if you're not getting this even after this, what are you going to sit here and do? And that's exactly what happens. In fact, he doesn't even need to say bye-bye. He doesn't throw them out of the ashram. They themselves are very happy and they go hand in hand, skipping, jumping along the path, and they leave before they get the knowledge. Very interesting. So sad for them. But anyhow. So now we have the other verse. Tauha Uchatuhu Yatha eva Idam avam bhagavah Sadhu alankritau Suvasanau Parishkritau Swa evam Eva Imau bhagavah Sadhu alankritau Parishkritau Iti eshaha Atma iti Hovacha Etad amritam Abhayam Etad brahma iti Tauha Shanta hridayau Pravrajatuhu Pravavrajatuhu. Yeah. So now this experiment either misfires or not, depending on what Prajapati really wanted. So when Prajapati asks, what do you see? What do they say? We see just as we are. We see ourselves clean, nice haircut, nice nail cut, manicure, pedicure, well adorned, well dressed. And just as we are, these little Atmas seen in the water, these reflections are also clean, well dressed, nice haircut, nice nail cut. These are also just like us. What a pretty picture we make. Oh Bhagavaha, oh Prajapati, oh teacher. And the teacher says, yes, indeed, this is the Atma, that fearless one, and that deathless one, and that Atma which you came for. This alone is it, right here. You saw it. You have had two full views, before and after. So, Atma before haircut, Atma after haircut. Atma before manicure, Atma after pedicure. You've seen the whole gamut of what constitutes the Atma, oh gentlemen. In other words, since you're already dressed, may as well go back. And then and what do? Shanta hridayah. So completely at peace with themselves. Shanta here means peaceful. Of course, Adi Shankara is quick to point out it is not absolute Shanti, it is relative Shanti. Meaning right now the questions are gone. Why is the questions gone? Because my pet peeves and my pet notion, and what is my pet notion? The body is indeed Atma, the Dehatma Buddhi has been confirmed by an exalted teacher like Prajapati, and that's why I'm happy. Yes, who is happy? Virochana is happy. The inner child is happy, the Asura is happy. But Indra is also happy temporarily because the Indra is under Virochana's spell. And so they both go hopping and skipping along. They just leave the ashram. End of the teaching? No. No. And seeing them depart, the Prajapati looks very sadly at them. and says, "Oh, look at them go, these ignorant ones, hopping and skipping as though they have no care in the world and as though they have already understood that which needs to be understood. Indeed, they have understood, but their understanding is all wrong. And whosoever among them," this is a very beautiful, what is that? Monologue of Lord Prajapati. "Whosoever among them thinks that the Atma is the body and thinks that this is the Upanishad and teaches this quote unquote Upanishad to the rest of the people, their whole clan will be destroyed." This is what he says. And then, as he is thinking this or articulating these words, Virochana builds a big hall, builds a big ashram for himself, and he says, I am a student of Lord Prajapati, I have been taught by him, now I am going to start my own ashram. Come one, come all, everybody is excited, everybody comes. And then he does the same thing. He puts a big cauldron of water. "Gentlemen, look at the Atma. Ladies and gentlemen, look at the Atma." And thereby starting a new Guru Parampara, Asura Parampara, filled with Dehatma Buddhi. Dehameva Atma iti Dehatma. This body is itself the Atma. There is nothing beyond this body. The body is the Atma. And so he teaches all of them, and they all start their own Guru Shishya Parampara, which is Asuri Parampara. And the Upanishad says, very beautiful, the Upanishad says, to this day, whoever eulogizes the body and whoever keeps decorating the body at the cost of the spirit, at the cost of understanding the truth of the body, and whoever has an obsessive compulsive relationship with the body, whoever deifies the body is called an Asura. And then the Upanishad also says the practice of adorning the body after death. In some cultures, Indian culture included, they put flowers on the departed body, on the body which has just been departed. They put flowers, and in certain cultures, they put food. In the Indian culture, they put some grains of rice in the mouth for the afterlife. And then they pack certain things in the elaborate post-death rituals in ancient Egypt. You find in the pyramids, all kinds of things they think the person will need in the afterlife is put, especially for royalty. So you find, even the servants are slaughtered and, buried right there. The poor servants were alive. And the pets, the cat and the dog are killed and buried along with the master. And then so many things, they think they will need so many sets of clothes. Because the body is the Atma. They don't have any other idea. And so he says that the Upanishad, the Chandogya Upanishad, makes a very dire proclamation at the end of this section and laments that whosoever, whether it be an individual or a group of people or an entire culture that deifies the body and deifies the dead, it should be heretofore, construed as an Asura. Asura means what? What you see is what you get. This is the Charvaka Vritti. Charu Vakyasya Charvaka. Charvaka means the sweet talking people who say body alone is the Atma. And as long as the body is there, Atma is there. If the body is not there, Atma is not there. The body itself is the Atma. So the body has to be made permanent. How do you make it permanent? Go to Florida, get a few facelifts. And, so you lift certain things, you tuck certain things, you suction out certain things, all these things, you make the body, and the whole, in the West we see this. You make the body, always you keep the body in some kind of a age other than what it is. And generally if you ask people their age, they will not tell. They will tell less. 5 years they will deduct and tell. Except when they are, past 80. When they are 80, they will increase it. I'm 90. Oh, but you don't look. They over 60. Yeah, that's the whole point. You increase it, it's contradictory. When you're 80, you say you're 95. But the idea is to look younger. That's it, is to appear younger because of the connection with the body. I told you earlier as an introduction to this retreat that we are going to find the subtle ways in which the obstacles to the teaching come. This is what it is. The subtlest way is to go with the belief that the body alone is the Atma. And that's a very, very subtle identification. Because deha upahita chaitanya, this Atma which is as though conditioned by this body mind complex, it's the indweller. And you can't, the body is like a suit, it's like a body is like a suit, except you don't know where the zipper is. You can't unzip and come out. That zipper is in the hand of Bhagavan. It's not in one's hands. And so therefore, there is a kind of a tadatmya. Tadatmya means what? A kind of a identification with the body. Because, who is the one who witnesses the pain? I, correct? If the body hurts, I am the one who witnesses the pain. I am the one who experiences it. And so, the Panchadashi in the 4th chapter talks about 3 kinds of associations or identifications with the body. We have discussed this before. What are they? First is, what is the 3 kinds of identification? Karmajam, Sahajam and Bhrantijam. Karmanaha jayate karmajam. So born of sahaja will take. Sahajat jayate sahajam. So sahaja tadatmya means an identification that is natural. Because if you poke this body, you only say ow. The neighbor doesn't say ow. When you are pinched, the person sitting next to you is not going to say ouch. There is a natural identification with this body. And then that is called sahaja tadatmya. And then there is a karmaja tadatmya, born of karma. Why this body? Why male body? Why female body? Why transgendered body? Why body of dog, cat, goat, etc.? Why this particular body? That is based on karma. There is a karmic identification with the body. Vasana is there for this body. And then what? Finally, Bhrantijam. That Bhrantehe Janitam, that is born of Bhranti. What is Bhranti? Brahma, Bhranti, delusion. Born of delusion of the self. Not knowing this is an identification here. The first 2 identifications you cannot do anything about it because it's a natural identification. You are the managing trustee of this body. And you have to take care of it. And then what? You also are not you cannot do anything about karma. That is from past life. Why you are in this body, why this kind of a body, why this kind of a, why some people drive a body that is in mint condition and why some people have a body that's a jalopi. One doesn't know. This is karma. You can't do anything. That is also not in one's hand. And what about the last identification? Bhrantija tadatmya. That is in our hands. That Bhranti, that delusion can go through the study of the, Atma Vidya, through the study of self-knowledge. And when the delusion goes, the other 2 identifications, are sublated. They don't matter. They don't matter at all. You can appreciate being in the body while knowing that you are really not the body. So that I am the body is the final kind of association, the last one, Bhrantija tadatmya, that identification is removed. But here in this case, the asuras were not able to remove this Bhranti. So they started their own parampara and they started their own ashram. Deha is equal to Atma. That was the main teaching there. And all the people went and they started their own lineages, and even till today those lineages continue stronger and they attract more people than this lineage which talks about what really the Atma is. That is definitely there. You know, I told this before in another context. I met one mortician. You know, mortician, the one who does this. So I was very curious. I said, what do you do and what is your job like? Do you have job satisfaction? Because you see, your customers don't complain. You know, so so I thought perhaps with non-complaining clients, maybe he has more job satisfaction. So I asked him, what is your life like? What is this? And he says, don't even ask. He says the relatives of the deceased, they are a pain in the neck. I said, why? He said, you know, last week one grandma died. She was 98 and a half and she had been in a vegetative state for almost 10 years, 8 years. A decade she had been in the vegetative state. She was as good as dead. And now that she has passed away, the people, the descendants, are threatening me to make her look alive, even though she is dead. Please make her look alive. So the whole time she was alive, she was looking dead. Now that she is dead, they want her to, this is Dehatma Buddhi. They want her to look alive. They want her to look as though she is just sleeping. Because this is our denial of death. Because this is the fear that this I, which is associated with the Atma, which I mistake it to be the Atma, is only the Atma. That is alone what I know. So I have to hang on to the body and make the finite infinite. Making the finite infinite is an infinitely exhausting job. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Next class is at 5 and satsang at 7. Okay? Yeah, because this way it will be easier. As soon as we finish dinner, we'll come back for satsang.
But now we have question answers.
Now we have, after lunch we have Swamini Sarlananda. With Swamini Sarlananda ji, we have a satsang. But,
I just wanted to say, add on, there's a new style, I just heard about it, that you can request your beloved to be presented sitting up.
In Samadhi.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I mean just, we're talking about Westerners.
Yes.